Welcome to Fantasy F1 DFS Picks. Today, I want to share with you a website, my favorite fantasy F1 tool. How do you get there? Just Google F1 Tempo. F1 Tempo, and this site has a really cool tool to help you evaluate drivers. It's simple, it's free. Let's look at Bahrain. We got one day in the books, and I know Mercedes is at the top of the board. What's wrong with Red Bull? If you watched enough YouTube videos yesterday, just like I did, you're not really worried about Red Bull. You're happy for Mercedes, maybe a little concerned for McLaren, but not that much has really changed. Tons of good YouTube content out there, so I'm not even going to try to compete with that. But I will share with you a tool that you can use at DraftKings to help you out. So 2024, pull up Bahrain, and we'll look at FP2 because FP2 is in similar track conditions and time as qualifying and the race towards the evening. And now we can just simply pick drivers and we can see almost everything that they have done. So we'll go with Verstappen first, and man, there it is. And we can see what tires they're on. We can see what time of day they were running. And we can switch it over to see the lap number. But you can see starts it out with a couple hero runs. See what they're going to do in qualifying. A 130.8 on the softs, and then pretty solid numbers here on the softs again for his long run. But just looking at him alone doesn't really tell us the whole thing. We want to compare him to other drivers, and so the obvious driver that we're going to want to compare him to is Lewis Hamilton, who is at the top of the board, which is a little surprising, but Mercedes did make some changes in the offseason. So you can see here it is, the hero run on lap 8 versus Verstappen. This is where he beat him, and we'll look further into that. But when we look at race pace, there's a clear difference, and Bahrain is a track where there is high degradation issues. And when we compare all of the different drivers, which we can do with this F1 Tempo team, Red Bull had the best pace. Verstappen, Checo Perez, much better. I think Piastri wasn't terrible. Lando Norris had some issues with McLaren. Hamilton and Russell were good, but when we look at race pace, which is going to be a significant factor of Bahrain, it clearly favors Verstappen. And, you go to last year in 2023, Verstappen won a lot of those races. He wasn't always on the pole. He actually started kind of deep in the field sometimes. So worst case scenario, he's lining up 5th, which I don't even think that's going to be the case. I expect that Verstappen's going to be right there on the front row, if not on the pole, pretty close when the time comes. But even if it doesn't, you would imagine through the course of a race, the Red Bull is going to find a way to overtake and pull away. One of the neat things that we can do is go even further and break down specific laps and compare the drivers. And you can see where people are fast and where they're beating each other. Which is pretty neat. You can see where Hamilton is a little bit faster and where Verstappen is catching him a little bit, but overall, Hamilton a little bit more speed on that number 1 glory run. And you can go even further and see exactly where it was, like right here, where Verstappen had to slow down a little bit sooner, getting into the corner, again slowing down more, and we're carrying much more speed right there. And then you come down here and you can start to see the difference between Verstappen and Hamilton's baseline. You see right here, which to me looks like just a mistake by Verstappen. So you take this one mistake away, which is not necessarily something that he does very often, then these lap times are going to be even a little bit more close. But even here you can see taking a little bit more time in the turns than Lewis Hamilton. Now, one of the issues they say is that Verstappen might have run the car a little bit tighter. It was a little windier, and the tighter setup is going to be better for race runs and maybe not as good, not as loose, not as much understeer as you need for, that glory run. It was tight. It was set up towards understeer. So that's the data that you can go through and jump on and figure out if you really want to get deep into this. I'll leave this to the super F1 experts and just trust their analysis and then come over here and double check it. Mainly what I focus on here is just seeing, all right, who was the fastest? That's great. And then who has pace? And we can add a couple other guys. We'll throw Piastri in the mix. And let's see. And it's always nice to see, look, over here we've got Piastri on a different compound, right? He's not running the same tire. He's running the mediums. And then when he switches to soft, he's not as fast. So he should make the third round, but other than that, not much. His pace is comparable to that of Lewis Hamilton's. He switches tires here. So those are data points you probably want to throw out. But the McLarens are right there as well. Not far off from Lewis. I would argue that probably the difference is just going to be who's starting close to the front on the day. Let's throw in Perez, take out Verstappen. And here we go again. Red Bulls with plenty of speed on the long run, not quite as fast as Verstappen, but right there with those guys all being pretty much sandwiched together in terms of race pace. Checo, after a year of not really qualifying well last season, that's not a good sign that he's slower than all those guys. You put him in the back of the pack, it's going to be a little bit tougher for him to score points. May not be a play on the board. And we'll close out by looking at Russell. It's just really trying to show you the tool, not trying to really necessarily make any picks. We've got way too much stuff on the screen right now. Let's take Piastri off. Let's take Hamilton off. Let's compare it to the Red Bull. And Russell looks maybe that he's a smidge faster. It's pretty close. But again, the Mercedes really fast in the quali trim. So something to look at. Just a cool tool I'm sharing with you. Enjoy Saturday morning, Bahrain.